There's quite a lot of releases to keep us talking this January, but there is only one on maybe the more kind of blockbuster end of the T&M sphere, and that comes from Ville Valo, the former Him frontman, coming through with something that has been anticipated ever since the breakup of that generational band half a decade ago. His solo debut. It's called Noir. The project name is just VV, as we've known for a while. And one thing that was never in question when Him was laid to rest was the idea that Ville Valo wanted to create to continue creating music. His was the songwriting mind behind practically all of Him's material, and when the communal project of that band was brought to a natural end due to communal reasons, you would imagine, we all knew it was clear from the start that Ville himself would have more in the tank where that came from. Been a minute though, hasn't it? It's been coming up on 3 goddamn years since Ville, under his new project name VV, dropped the EP containing the first 3 songs from this project, all of which appear on this album. That is a long time between hearing the first notes of something and then hearing the full thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, the world shut down. I feel like this is probably one of those albums that did hit several delays because of COVID and all that. But yeah, I mean, between the last Him album, Him breaking up, and then this project starting, been a long old while. So this was pretty highly anticipated, especially off the back of us doing our Him special. This feels like, again, one of those kind of addendums that we're adding on to the end of that, really.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this. I mean, the strength of those singles certainly helped, but the fact is, it's 10 years in 2023 since the final Him album, Tears on Tape, and getting a whole new body of work from the man was, for myself, pretty fresh and really novel, because his work in that time is something that I really grew to fall in love with. Again, our Him special back in 2021 that we did on that simple Patreon, I think all of our specials are good, but that is one of the ones that I put on the slightly higher pedestal in terms of...
We were just swooning a lot in that one.
Yeah, but not just how much I enjoyed it, but also how much we managed to kind of explore the nuances of an artist who is often tarred with kind of a certain brush. Elliot, I've got to ask if you're a Him fan first of all, because you weren't with us then.
Well, it's funny, it was because of that special that I started to gain an appreciation for them.
Nice. Excellent.
It was like you were saying, they were sort of tarred with a certain brush, and I don't know, I was quite young around the time I started encountering Him, so I probably just dismissed them. I probably thought...
The first time I ever saw Him was the Funeral of Hearts video, and I did not want anything to do with it.
Well, this is it. It was there's been a bunch of bands which I was dismissing for similar reasons, but listening to it, and again, it was sort of a slight just curiosity to see what do people who love this band love so much about them, and then you're just listening to you describe the records and going, oh, that actually sounds quite good, oh, that sounds like something I'd like, and then going and listening to it. I got into Venus Doom.
I was going to guess Venus Doom would have been your first port of call.
Yeah, exactly. So I was curious to see what Ville Valo would do solo, because he's clearly the figurehead of that band, the second most famous member of Him I couldn't name, so I thought it'd be interesting to see what he did without the other guys. So I was anticipating it, again, in a sort of curious sense, rather than actually really looking forward to listening to it for enjoyment.
Well, when we got the Gothica Fenica EP, which gave us the likes of Run Away from the Sun and Salute the Sanguine, there was a real sense of assuring familiarity about that. There was essentially nothing outside the box about them, but they felt like songs that could only come from Ville Valo. And as the 3 years since their release has, attested to, really high quality ones. Those choruses are massive, and they still pop up in my head. And now the album's come out and they've been refreshed in my memory, they will do so more so again. And just that kind of overall sense of the big man is back and he's doing the thing we all love that he's particularly good at, without any of maybe the particular slant or bells and whistles that you might get on different Him albums. Noir as a collective, 56.5 minutes in total. How reflective and successful do you think that is?
Well, I think he sounds genuine. Again, after Tears on Tape, which is one of my least favourite Him records, where I think they sound burnt out and tired and the creative was run dry, I think he sounds, even though again you're right, it's not actually that dissimilar, it feels like it could only come from him, he just sounds really refreshed on this album, and he's regained a kind of a real deep loving passion almost. Again, that passion is one of those things that defines the best Him material, and that feels back all the way in this. So the moment on Echo Locator Love comes in, you get that kill the light. I'm there we go. That is what I've been just missing from music these last couple of years.
I agree that he sounds fired up and reinvigorated, and in terms of songwriting, I don't really have anything to say to fault this record. What I will say is, listening to this, it kind of did show up a bit of why Him were a special band. Because listening to this, I just think, man, these songs, they're good, but they're screaming out for a band. And I don't know if that's a shared belief, but that was the dominating impression that I got listening to this thing.
I would insert myself pretty much halfway between what both of you have just said. I certainly think that he's made a couple of other records with like different projects and stuff since Him broke up. This is the first time he's returned to like, you know, essentially the well of Him, and it certainly sounds like that well of songs has been refreshed. And I think you can hear how like settled into a creative groove by himself Ville is on this. It's definitely one of those cases where you lay bare the songwriting engine of a band just on its own, and it doesn't have the dynamism that band brought. Like the sort of push and pull that you might have in Him records isn't so much there, so it is maybe a little more one note. What you have is the root component of songs in that kind of classic style delivered in spades, and for that, like, I am so on board for just an album of this man doing what he does. It feels like getting Ville back to writing songs like these in an almost like relaxed way. Like it's a really breezy, easy listen. Like it's lighter on the doom detours, heavy on the immediacy. Like you say, Echo Like It Your Love is just like an immaculate little pop song to start with, and it managed to be so massive, but while being almost kind of like whispered. Like his melodic strength is that good. I mean, some of it's like almost like a more soft-spoken, less in your face and garish Screamworks in that sense.
Screamworks is the closest comparison I have to this. Yeah. I think this is really poppy, and
you got like electro-pop beats and stuff, so on. And I certainly think that Ville would tell you that the music he's into, that he would have lent the most on during this record, would be the kind of 80s pop side.
Yeah, no, there's loads of 80s pop on this, but again, like, and some of that kind of new wavy kind of like stuff there. But I think these kind of just lent on this being a more electronic heavy record, and which is why I'm fine with it not having like the full kind of heft of like a metal band behind it. Now, there are some songs where I'm like, you could have done a bit more of that, and there are moments like when they do bring in those slightly more metallic touches that I actually feel they give these songs a bit of an extra kick. But for the most part, I'm so fine with this being a pop record from Ville, because his pop sensibilities and he's like the way he can just deliver so many great little hooks across this record. Like the "Come Love Me Till It Hurts" one on the title track is so, again, just stuck with me. Like, I mean that I'm just so on board with that.
Yeah, like all of the Ville tropes are here. Like those piano lines that feel like they're coming down a waterfall. You got like "Love Let In." You mentioned the title track, which has this like classic flourish of, you know, "Wings of a Butterfly" guitar melody that I just lap up. I really, that chorus you were singing there as well. Like I love like the lower register in the chorus lifting off into the falsetto at the end. Just like works such a treat. "Love Letting" as well has that kind of like clapping bridge that I only forgive that because he's Ville Valo.
I'm so on board with that. I love that shit. Give me that 80s cheese. Like, yeah, that is so good.
I do like the kind of electronic edge that it takes on with the bass and stuff. But like the language as well, where only he could write a song where the chorus is "Deliver me, baby lacrimarium," or "Love the Saturnine Saturnalia." Just stringing words together as long as you connect them with love. And I lap it up because it sounds sumptuous, and the pop sensibility is so on point.
I think I'm hearing what you guys are describing more in the second half of the record. I think the first half maybe suffers more with that static problem. In the second half, when he sort of becomes maybe a bit more fluid in his songwriting, maybe like you have like these longer songs, shorter songs, it feels like there's a bit more variety. He explores a bit more AOR, even at points in like classic Scandi pop, like in that Saturnalia.
Yeah.
But I think at that point, that really shows like, oh, this is what Ville brought to him. This is like his contribution. Maybe in a way that's more fleshed out and suits the dynamic of the record a bit more.
I can see where you're going with that, because the second half has the bits where it sort of branches out a little bit more. Like you've got two kind of, you know, lengthier sort of doom ballads, for want of a better word. There's that what's the name of the song? It's like the really kind of gentle kind of soft acoustic one, "Heart Full of Ghosts."
Yeah.
Which for me is maybe the weakest song on the album, but I appreciate it for kind of breaking up the flow a little bit. So I can see why you might go, oh, there's a little bit maybe more variety to that back half. I just think this record comes out of the gates with the hits so well, where when you are thinking about stuff on this that could have been singles, you look at the opening run, and it's the first like 7 or 8 songs or something, and that's evidence in the fact that like he released 3 incredible songs years ago, and then still has like gas in the tank to launch the album with. Oh, by the way, I've held on to Echolocate Your Love, or the title track, or you know, all of these other kind of songs.
Forever Lost and stuff
yeah,
like that.
Forever Lost and that. Like, I think it comes out of the gate so well with bangers, and then does kind of give you some much needed sort of variety as you are getting into a second half when maybe that thing might begin to wear a little thin.
Yeah.
Because I that's one of my favourite things is that it is like so immediately grabs your attention, and then you get the more interesting sort of opening out of the record, like Intronodia being so dramatic in its kind of balladry, like
that's just like aggressively fucking like gorgeous to a cheesy degree, you know, like a
like it's almost like
feeling. Yeah,
it's almost got like not quite like full on like Jim Stein, but it's got a touch of that kind of just like bombast to it, and yeah, it's so cinematic and lush. And then you get like Saturnine Saturnalia, which is the one where you really kind of get that doom influence is really coming through, and I think that like really interesting. And like to me, that probably should have been the album closer. Like I do like think the album is maybe a touch too long. I would like end it on Saturnine Saturnalia, and I'd be like, this is like a perfect return for the man.
Vertigo Eyes is maybe a little superfluous, so close to Saturnine doing a similar thing, but it works for what it is. And like, you know, I like the kind of distorted ambient outro, like the record's warping, or you're in like a haunted shopping mall or something. And it's one of those cases where it's like, well, we haven't had a record from this guy in this style in a decade. Like
probably a lot of ideas going on there.
Yeah, a lot of songs have been built up, and I'm happy to take them. Saturday and Saturnalia, I agree, because like that was one of the one of the 3 EP songs that was the kind of least showy, and it was maybe easy to forget about in that sense. But when you reach it here in the album, it's like, fuck, this song is like great. Again, for the flow of the record, it needed a bit of girth and a kind of a doom ballad like that, and you know, the yearning in the chorus against that Sabbath root is amazing. I think, you know, the production, it does sound a bit more stilted and less vibrant than like a full band hymn record would. It's a proper solo effort in the sense that all of the instruments have been recorded over the fucking pandemic, like by Ville, so credit there. But again, it doesn't have much of the dynamism, but when it does have those, you know, fuzz guitars and stuff come in, it's unmistakable, and it's again kind of assuring that like no one else puts doom guitars into songs as like unashamedly pop and mainstream eared as this. Particularly not in the modern age, like in the time since, you know, him got massive doing that has passed. And like, you know, the Forever Lost packs a riff whenever they come in, it's great. And just the melodies on it are, you know, that same song, it puts it against those kind of like 80s synth pop isms in both the beat and the keys. And when it goes to that kind of like new wave edge, Baby Lacrimarium is like the best head on the door era Cure song that they didn't put on tape. Like that central guitar melody is so fucking big while being so lush and enveloping. It's so instantaneous. Yeah,
no, totally. I think, like I say, like I'm fine with the production track, and I think it kind of just accentuates the best parts in terms of the melodies, and like it has a real like pop sheen to it without sounding completely hollow and synthetic. I think like does a really good job on that, and I think it just brings out those pop elements which I'm enjoying the most. Like it just makes it sound what it needs to be.
Yeah, I don't really have an issue with the production on this record. That's not my criticism primarily. I think it's just that I think it could sound the same, but I think maybe if it was some of it was recorded more live in a room. I don't know how this was recorded. It certainly doesn't sound like it was recorded live in a room. Which,
well, I mean, Villa's doing all the instruments, so unless he's got like 12 arms, it absolutely wasn't recorded.
Cymbals on his knees.
Live. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that explains it then. Yeah, I think like maybe this record, I don't think you'd have to change any of the songs really. I think maybe if you just went the Dio route and got a fucking good strong team behind him, I think it might have a bit more life, because he's such a soulful singer and songwriter that I think maybe it would allow that side of it to, you know, be as expansive as it deserves to be.
Yeah, it's something that can be hopefully, you know, kind of developed more as you know this project moves on forward. I think my complaints with this are only with like my critics hat on and stuff, and I just love listening to it because like we're gonna need a little while before we find a record in 2023 with a stronger set of choruses than this one, and it's just Ville Valo doing what he does again. And again, it's all pretty soft spoken. I mean, as a greatest love songs kind of razor blade romance warrior, I would like if he brought a little more kind of that, you know, the low end edge to his performance to kind of counterbalance it. But all of these melodies are so great. It's a slight shame that my favourite song would probably still come down to between Run Away from the Sun and Salute the Sanguine, and they've been out for 3 years. But part of that, I'm sure, is my familiarity bias, having built that up over time, and that won't affect the listening of this album going forward in the years to come when they all just become part of the same package. And, like, come on, that Run Away from the Sun chorus is just inescapable. Like, it sounds classic.
Yeah. I mean, I took that over a lot of, like, the cheesier hymn ballads at times. Like, some of them, when they could go a bit too far, like, Run Away from the Sun gets that balance between just... It is cheesy, but it's so lush and just, like, catchy at the same time that it just infects you.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years since Tears on Tape, and if you heard our hymn special, that was the hymn record that I personally did rank lowest, and I would have this over that for sheer consistency of song, which this really brings. Like, if you are a hymn fan, this is a real one to celebrate, I think, because sometimes when bands break up and their members go solo, they don't necessarily deliver the same thing that you loved about the band, but, you know... whether the band kind of chemistry is there or not, it does feel like there is going to be a whole string of more material that fits with the lineage of what that like incredible Hall of Fame band built over 20 years. This is the extension of that catalogue and that legacy.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think, you know, even though he's had a long and storied career already, I think Ville Valo's first time going solo, I think you allow for these sort of, well, you don't want to call them errors because this is a fantastic debut for this standard. I just think that I'm sure these things will be ironed out, like these problems I have. Maybe next time, like he might realise this himself. So, yeah, I think I'm already excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, one of a kind. VV Neon Noir.